Good afternoon, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome today our guest, Caroline Gallup. Caroline, hello, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, here in my
Good.
workshop.
Oh, that is your workshop for Dormouse Jewellery.
Yeah, yeah.
Hence the interesting looking shelves behind you.
Mm.
What are on those shelves?
There are various bits of gemstones, coloured stones, and the tools of my trade. So
Ah,
all the wire and sheet metal, and yeah.
okay, great. Caroline, we actually met, I don't know if you remember this, but we met a couple of years ago, right at the beginning of January 2019. We
Hmm.
So one of these fire up for the new year events on, I think it was the first Saturday of the year or something like that. Do you remember that? And we
Yeah.
were sitting in the front row, and we got chatting, and that's how we very first met. And then our paths have crossed again, obviously through the Athena network, haven't they?
Mm.
But we had a meeting a while ago, and I was so absolutely fascinated by your backstory. And normally what I do in these sessions is start off by asking people to tell us how they came to be doing what they're doing now. And I do want to ask you about that, because what you're doing now is making some wonderful, wonderful jewellery through your company, Dormouse Jewellery. So I do want to talk about that. But you've also got a really fascinating earlier career. So I'd love you to tell us a little bit about that, how you came to get into it, and just because it's so different from most of our careers, I guess.
Yeah, no, I sort of think of myself now as being lucky enough to be on my third career.
Okay,
Um, and
nice.
a bit of the comeback kid in me, really. Um, so, what I wanted to talk to people about today is resilience, and also never giving up, and the fact that nothing is ever wasted in your life experience. So, I used to be for 25 years. I was a successful stage manager and live event producer. And I ended my career at Earl's Court, at Royal Albert Hall as an event manager. I had some amazing experiences. Worked at the Royal Shakespeare Company and in the West End, and I toured extensively with Andrew Lloyd Webber's company. And this came about really as the rebellious streak in me, really. My
Really?
father, yeah, really. And yeah, my dad was a doctor. He was a GP. We lived in Ross-on-Wye in Herefordshire, and he was brilliant at languages. He spoke 5 languages fluently. He was a research chemist. He was a GP later in life. He qualified when he was 38. Um, and basically, I was good at everything he didn't respect. So
Okay.
I was good at, or he couldn't see, to be fair, he couldn't see a future for me in it, a stable future. So I was good at music,
Mhm.
art, English, and useless at languages. So all the way through my school days, I suppose, I spent trying to please him and try. I think this is in common with a lot of people, especially I was an only child. So all the focus was on me and how I would achieve. And basically, I think I was a square peg in a round hole. Basically, I was trying to be good at science, be good at languages, and be good at maths. And not only did I not succeed, I failed spectacularly at all of them. So I would get U's and unclassifieds, and teachers would roll their eyes when my parents would go to parents' evening, and they would come back and go, "Oh gosh, can she do nothing?" But of course, my mum was really supportive of. I was excelling at art and design and music and all the arts. However, coming from, a scientific background, I sort of failed at school, except I got really good marks in the arts. So I had 2 careers. This career I'll come back to, but basically at school, my 2 art teachers were silversmiths. So that was an amazing benefit, universal stroke of luck, whatever you want to call it. So they trained us in silver and goldsmithing. But when it came to the end of my school life, I thought if I could do jewelry, that would be great, but I'd have to stay local. By that time, like any teenager, I was desperate to get away from home. So I found a degree course up in Yorkshire. Considering I lived in Herefordshire, I couldn't have really gone much further, and did a degree in drama and English. Ill health intervened. I had a bad accident when I was 21, major fracture of my ankle, and which meant I left the degree course, came home for a year, and then went to drama college. I just fitted in so beautifully. I was so happy. It was definitely what I needed to do, and then my career took off. So that was
really interesting, because it's, you know, I mean, I guess to some extent, I mean, I think you said, you haven't said it today, but I think you said when we met, you went to, you know, really quite a good school where academia was the main thing.
Yeah.
So not, although you had your teachers, and what a blessing. I mean, how inspired to be teaching, you know, silversmith crafting to as children at school. Brilliant.
Well, and they also they had to write the exams. They had to write the GCSE and the A level to get ratified by the exam board. You know, they were fantastic people.
Yes. I mean, I'd like to think nowadays children at school would have those kind of wider choices, but I don't know.
I don't think so. I did a talk at our local secondary school as part of the Chamber of Commerce initiative. And what was sad, I mean, we're sort of jumping to what I do now, but they were saying parents don't believe that what's now called resistant materials is a proper course, you know, which is sad, because I was saying, well, there's all sorts of breadth of skills you can bring to this industry, but I'll go back to that when you're ready.
Yeah. Okay. But what I loved about what you've just talked about was the fact that the minute you were on your drama course, you fit in. And I think for many of us, we sometimes find ourselves in a situation where all of a sudden we feel we found our tribe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then that's when we can become our best, isn't it?
Yeah, and I progressed very quickly, you know, and I made a lot of friends. I have lifelong friends. My year at drama college, we still get together whenever we can, and we all still know each other.
And you must have met some, you know, very famous people when you were working and stage managing and doing all of that. Do you have a particular story? I know we haven't talked about this in preparation, but do you have a particular story about anybody that you met that was either funny or whatever? Was there anything that stuck in your mind from those 25 years?
Yeah, I think in general, the more talented the person, the artist, the nicer they are.
Okay.
And the less they need attention. And the more generous they are. So someone like, oh gosh, Michael Maloney, who's been in a lot of TV, he was been in Truly Madly Deeply, he was recently in oh gosh, I've had a bit of a brain freeze on what, but Michael Maloney, very talented actor. Also Mark Rylance.
Oh yes.
And they are what you call good company members. So outside something like the Royal Shakespeare Company, they will be the ones that say, shall we go to Birmingham for a Balti, you know, or shall we organise a night out at the Dirty Duck in Stratford? And, you know, generally you find the less they have to prove in terms of they're just really talented, the more generous of spirit they can be. Because it is dog eat dog for them. It's a highly competitive industry. But and the one funny story I have is, well, I've got plenty, but I was at the Royal Albert Hall and I was doing a concert with Willard White, who is a bass, a very famous operatic bass, really tall black American singer. And he was like, can you call me a cab, please, at the end? And I went, you're a cab. And he went, oh, what? You know, you must have heard that gag. And his bass voice, he just boomed. He went, that is the best. I have never heard anything like this before. I thought, I can't believe it was so simple. Never heard it.
That is funny. That is funny. Yeah, you must have had some great times. So let's come forward then to what caused you to move out of that career and start you on the path to jewellery making.
Well, at the end of 5 years at Royal Albert Hall, I was, how old was I? 37.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to start a family. And I'd also met my husband by then. And we had discovered we had to have fertility treatment in order to have a family. So my career, I mean, it wasn't conducive. He works in film. He was working mornings and afternoons. I was working evenings and weekends, and it just wasn't conducive to any sort of family life. So I took the decision to start my own production company, with the support of the Royal Albert Hall and a year's work, which was lovely as a freelancer. Another story altogether is I met a very unscrupulous promoter who basically took all my contacts. I had to close my company because it cost me 40 grand. I didn't go bust. I'm very proud of the fact that I paid everyone I owed money to. And in those days, you didn't have bank transfers. So I was writing checks, sending them first class, ringing people and go, get it in the bank. All the money I've got is in my account now. And I closed the company with 26 pence left.
Good for you. Good
and
for
everybody paid. But anyway, that then sort of led to a feeling of I wanted to do something that was in my control, that I wasn't reliant on as a service industry, if you like. Long story short, we tried to have kids, realized that neither of us, well, I wasn't getting pregnant. My husband was what they call azospermic, so he'd never produced sperm. And actually, 50% of the infertilities are male factor, 50% are female.
Okay.
And so, and 76%, and it's still the same, I believe, are unsuccessful through fertility treatment. But of course, you don't want to think you're one of those.
No.
So I wrote a book about it, which I will. Here we go.
Yes, you show us. Wow.
There we go. Making Babies the Hard Way. And that won an award because it had both a female and male point of view in it. At the end of that, and I'd done a sort of lecturing tour with the fertility industries to help couples. I didn't ever ask for any money for that. So it was, never going to be a way to earn a living. So we moved out. We were, in London. We moved out of London, decided to pay off a chunk of our mortgage and moved out to Buckinghamshire, where I am now. The very first holiday we took, I fell down the stairs. And thought I had done something to my ankle, but I'm not very good at going to hospital or anything like that. And it was Christmas, so I thought I'm not going to A&E at Christmas. So I rammed on an Ugg boot and waited for it to heal. And I had fractured my toe, but basically what it revealed was that I destroyed my ankle. That accident I mentioned that I had when I was 21, 25 years on my feet in stage management, and we used to wear Dr. Martens. We didn't know about arch support then. So a lot of people will know that DMs were the thing.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I had an underlying genetic condition. I had ligaments that were very loose, and basically I had to stop what I was doing in production management and regroup and try and start again.
Wow. And so was the jewellery the thing that came to mind straight away, or?
Well, after 6 operations on my ankle, I started to experience chronic pain, like a fibromyalgia. And I looked up a good old Dr. Google, what will help chronic pain. And it said crafting using the left side of the brain. And the right side of the brain sends out pain signals, and left side of the brain will distract you because it's the creative side. So I started crafting again, and I started going to adult education short courses, and I did a bit of stained glass, and then I went from stained glass to dichroic glass, which is sparkly glass, and started making jewelry. And then I ended up making jewellery with gold and silver. And I suddenly thought, I remember how to do this.
Yes, fabulous.
So, yeah.
Wow. And why Dormouse Jewellery? Where did the name come from?
I'm a Buddhist, and I was chanting about a name, and Dormouse came up because I wanted it to be very British,
Right.
very associated with nature, inspired by nature. And I thought Dormouse just came to me, and I thought, well, no one's got any negative connotations about dormice, do they? And I was also sleeping a lot at the time because of my pain condition.
Right.
And I just thought, well, why not? And I wanted to give profits to endangered British species wildlife, which is still an aim for my company.
Mm-hmm.
But with COVID and everything, I'm afraid not making much profit yet.
No. And I'm guessing that you're wearing one of your pieces, are you?
Yes.
Very nice.
So this is, I like unusual clasps as well. So that's a nice bulk clasp. And this is fluorite and grey pearls and labradorite. And nice. I like mixing coloured stones and pearls, and trying to ethically source everything I do.
Lovely. And do you make bespoke pieces if anybody's?
Yeah, I make mostly, I work to commission. So all of these drawers behind me have stones in them and pearls and things like that. And so what we do when people come to the workshop, when people are able to come, is we look through stones and combinations, and I design collaboratively. So I don't have a big ego about my designs. I just like to make people happy, so they can have what they want.
Yeah. Okay, that's lovely. And I know that you wanted to really bring out the resilience. I mean, obviously you live with pain now, don't you?
Yeah.
So I just wondered if you wanted to say any more about that in particular.
Well, the other thing I had a passion for when I was a teenager was horse riding. And because I got diagnosed with osteoporosis and something called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a disability, and that's the genetic condition that was underlying, and all the trauma I had to my ankle, all the surgeries, that manifested itself, and it is associated with painful joints, painful ligaments, fight or flight, panic attacks, and I just thought, what can I do that isn't going to affect and I got nerve damage in my foot as well, so I needed to stay strong, stay exercised, and try and build strength. And so I thought, horse riding, I'll go back to horse riding. Only had a gap of 34 years. But it was the only thing I could think of that would keep my body with parameters that I would not have to think about. I couldn't think about anything else. When you're on a horse, it's got a mind of its own. You have to just concentrate. And when I started riding again, I could only stay on for 3 minutes. And just recently, I did a 2-hour hack, but it's taken me 3 years to get there. Wow. And the turning point, it took me a year and a half nearly to canter and to have the strength to canter. And just doing that 2-hour hack in December made me so excited about what I'd achieved. But very early on, I had to let go of what I was formerly capable of.
Right. Yes.
And being a very driven person, I would be going great guns one week, and same with jewelry. And then the next week I might have a flare up, and I just had to stop, had to cancel a lesson. And I think the turning point was when I went, okay, you just have to do what you can do, and don't set a time limit on it, and just keep going. Don't give up. If you have to get off the horse after 3 minutes this week, maybe you can stay on for 20 minutes next week. And same with jewelry, just keep getting up and doing it again.
So that's obviously the specific relevance of what you're doing now and with your injury, but there's quite a few themes throughout your life, aren't there? And I'm always looking for themes about, because I've always got in mind people sharing their story through speaking, and I know you've shared part of your story in your book, but there are always some similarities between writing and speaking, but speaking obviously is slightly different in that you have to have your audience now, whereas books people can pick up when it suits them and go back to if they lost concentration for a bit, whereas with speaking that's not the case. But there sounds as though there's some themes of resilience throughout, because even in those early days where you were wanting to please your father, and I don't know whether you felt there was pressure put on you or whether it was in your head that you wanted to please him, but still that you needed to be quite resilient to keep going with the things that you really enjoyed, I think.
Yeah, I think yes. And I think the easy answer is I wasn't any good at anything else. but and I felt like an alien foundling child a bit in but I wanted to please him, but ultimately he was never happy.
Right.
So, and it was his unhappiness, not mine.
Yes. And you couldn't change that.
No.
And I think that's another lesson for people, isn't it, that it's not uncommon of children or partners or whatever to really work so hard at wanting to please somebody else, but actually you don't have that within your power.
You don't. And I also think, it's also understandable because they came from, my dad and my mum came from very working class backgrounds. My grandfather was a silversmith, weirdly.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and my great uncle and my grandfather were both artists. Mm-hmm. So but it's very late on now, only probably the last 2 or 3 years when I've gone, well, of course I was good at art and jewelry. It just skipped a generation.
Mm-hmm.
And my mum was my biggest champion, in terms of pushing me forward. But it caused big rows between them. Mm-hmm. But when Dad died in 1994, so 26 years ago now, I started to feel free. Mm-hmm. I don't think I could have done it any differently, but I didn't ever deny what I wanted to do to mm-hmm. myself. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the big lesson for me. Mm-hmm. Also, coming back to horse riding and jewelry, now that I'm 57, I feel like I've met myself coming back, and that's the most wonderful feeling.
Lovely. I think, I'd always like to give some thought about how you could use your stories through, and I think there's some lovely themes there about concentric circles, because you've got that circle of your grandfather being a silversmith and coming back to you now, but then there's those circles going almost the other way about you now meeting yourself coming back, as it were. So there's an awful lot there that you could do if you're ever in a place where you wanted to start speaking about your story. Yeah. I think
so. And also, my husband's been telling me for 20 years that I was a creative person. Mm-hmm. And maybe I should have listened to him a bit earlier.
We can never hear it till we're ready, can we?
No, we can't. No. And I think also what I really want to say to people is nothing in life that you experience is ever wasted. Mm-hmm. In Buddhism, we have a saying of turning poison into medicine.
Ah, nice.
So if you can turn your poison into medicine,
yes,
you can heal yourself. You can heal your life.
That might be a great title for your talk.
Yeah, it might.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Karen, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing all of that today. It's been absolutely fascinating. I enjoyed listening to you and hearing all of that, and been really, really good. So how can people find you now, whether they want to connect about the jewelry or to hear more about your story? The book is on Amazon, I think.
Yeah, it is.
If you want to put the link to that in the comments below, and where else can they find you?
They can follow me on Facebook. They can follow me on Instagram, and they can like me on Facebook rather. And I want to say, actually, Rachel, thank you so much for this opportunity as well. And I really enjoyed the story hunt that we did just before Christmas. So, but yes, I'm going to revamp my website quite shortly because I've just had some new stones in. But at Dormouse_jewellery is my Instagram. There is my website link, and I'm much better at keeping Instagram up to date than my website.
Okay, right. Thank you so much. Yeah, I look forward to chatting to you another time and hearing even more of your stories. Thank you so much.